Left off here in the last part of the video. Apologies for the abrupt stop there. What I was pointing out here is that again we have these big categories, agranulocytes versus granulocytes, and then in each of these categories we have a lot of more specific things. So I don't recommend memorizing every single one of these types of cells. You should know the monocytes, the macrophages, dendritic cells, T cells, and B cells, as well as the natural killer cells. All these other things, I would say you don't need to memorize specifically, but you should know, again, those broad groups. The agranulocytes and the granulocytes, know that they are leukocytes, which are white blood cells, and of course recognize that there are things in the blood that are not white blood cells. There are platelets and red blood cells, which are also extremely important. Okay, so something else that you may have heard of before are these molecules called cytokines. And cytokines are these small molecules that are released from immune cells, and they are basically signaling molecules. So think about what this means. If we think about what this means is that they are molecules that can be bound by immune molecules and other types, immune cells and other types of cells as well. So this means that there's some protein, which might be an enzyme, that is binding to these cytokines. These cytokines are produced by various types of immune cells, including, as we see here, monocytes, macrophages, lymphocytes, fibroblasts, mast cells, platelets, and endothelial cells. So lots of cells are producing these. What does that tell you? That they're really important and they're a powerful method of signaling. So there are different kinds of cytokines, and depending on what kind of cytokine that it is that we're talking about, you might have a very specific area that is affected, or you might have the entire body being affected, and it also varies whether this effect is short or long lasting. And so here I'm just gonna summarize this and say that there are many different types of cytokines. Again, the type will depend whether they have a small localized or a large generalized effect. And we see that different types of cells can produce them, and different types of cells will respond to them. And as I said, that it's not only the white blood cells or matured white blood cells that are responding. Other types of cells that might respond are the stem cells, as well as tumor cells, which is important. And so the MPS here, the mononuclear phagocyte system, this is basically just, I think of it as a highway. It is a connected network of fibers. And what does that mean? Well, it's not just a bunch of strings, but rather what we see here in the image, it is cells that are embedded in a fibrous extracellular matrix. And in this tissue, in this kind of substance, this is how the macrophages all the phagocytic cells can travel throughout the body. And so this type of tissue is found in many of our immune organs, including the thymus, lymph nodes, tonsils, and spleen. And it has lots of white blood cells called macrophages. And so this is a really important part of your body's defense. Okay. So this is the end of the chapter. We talked about the human microbiome previously in a recorded lecture. I did want to mention this slide, the nonspecific chemical defenses. So the nonspecific chemical defenses are really important, and it includes things like the enzymes that you have in your saliva, enzymes that you have in your tears, and in your sweat. So all three of these, saliva, sweat, and tears, contain enzymes that are antimicrobial. So really you think of those liquids as being pretty benign, but in reality they are protecting your body, and they are an important component of the immune system. Again, they are part of the first line of defense. They are non-specific, but they do work immediately right up front, and they are protecting you. So the non-specific chemical defenses also include things like the pH of different areas of your body, and let's see, digestive juices and bile in the intestines, and other chemicals in the stomach. And specifically, I did just want to go right here and point out the lysozyme. So lysozyme is an enzyme. It says, I think this definition is kind of funny because it focuses on where it is. So lysozyme, yes, is found in tears and saliva, but the important part is that lysozyme lyses bacterial cells, and it lyses bacterial cells by breaking bonds between peptidoglycan molecules in the cell wall of bacteria. And this enzyme is actually extremely important for things like lab work, because if you are going to look at the DNA, for example, or really anything inside of a bacterial cell, lysozyme treatment is one of the best ways to break open that bacterial cell. And another great part of this is that lysozyme can go in the freezer. You could freeze it. It's still going to be active when you take it out, so you could keep it in the lab for essentially forever. And again, that lysozyme can be combined with a bacterial culture, and then you're going to burst open all those cell walls, and you get all the good stuff out in terms of DNA and RNA and all that, if that's what you're studying. All right. So I think that we are going to end this part of the lecture here, and then I will talk a little bit about the next chapter in another recording once I get that file open. I'm also doing this in little bits because I don't want the files to be too large to for people to download, or for me to upload for that matter. So thanks for bearing with me, and I'll see you in the next lecture.